There are certainly some things that Pro Tools does different from other DAWs, like Logic and Ableton, for example. So if you do not want to make the same mistakes that I did when I started out using Pro Tools, here are my 5 tips to make the transition as easy as possible for you. I usually like to show what I'm talking about on an actual session. So this here is False Prophets, which just released, so obviously I would appreciate a listen. And the first thing that we actually want to discuss is the follow main pan setting. So if you open one of these stands here, you will actually see that this yellow FMP sign is actually lit up. And you see that the pan is to -9, which is basically the same pan as the flexi channel here. So if I move that around, see, this moves in tandem. So if I would deactivate that, you can see that I can actually pan things differently from the main pan, which is one of the things that Pro Tools actually does different per default from any other DAWs. You can actually set this per default to send pans default to follow main pan, which is what I would suggest, unless obviously you want to get creative. There's like certain delay effects, for example, like this one here, where follow main pan is deactivated for me. But if you want to go into a hall or a reverb or something like that, you might actually want to have that set because it will improve the imaging overall. The second thing that I want to show you is folders. Now, folders are super useful and most DAWs already support them, and Pro Tools actually has multiple ways to do folders. So if we use the quite complicated shortcut here, Command-Option-Shift-N, or we go to Track, Move to New Folder, you will actually be able to move things into a folder. And we have 2 different types. We have the basic one and the routing folder. The basic one is literally just that. It is just a folder. Let's say open and close it. You can solo and mute that folder. But if you want to be a bit more creative with things, you can actually move that into a routing folder. The routing folder has a few setup options, as well as this checkmark here to route tracks to the new folder, which is like super helpful. So if you would move all these drum channels here, for example, into a drum folder, you would be able to process them all combined together, as well as change their routing here. You will also see that all the folders have been actually routed to the drum folder. Another interesting thing that Pro Tools does by default is that it will hide the tempo information. So if you go to Window and Transport, or you hit Command and the numpad 1, so it's always good to have a numpad with Pro Tools, is bringing up the transport window. And in the transport window here, you can actually easily set the tempo of your track, as well as activate or deactivate count off. Now, one of the things that is also a bit more complicated than in other DAWs is the way that the click track works. So you can always go to track and say create click track right here, which will create a click track right here. And then you can basically switch the count off on and off right here. And if you go to setup, click count off, you can actually define when this click is supposed to play. So you can set it to basically play all the time, only during record, only during count off. You can also set the count off duration. All of these work in tandem, but it is like a bit distributed all across the system. Now, let's say you're playing your song and you quickly want to make some changes to your inserts. You can actually do that here and display them and make some changes. And last but not least, if you have a channel setting that you really like, you can right-click that and save the track preset, which you can then later recall. And the cool thing here is that you can actually select all the track data that you might actually want to save into this preset. So for example, you might not want to have the main output assignments here, or maybe you do not want to store all the different sends in this track preset. So otherwise, if you would load that, it would also try to restore all the sends. So this is like super handy and super useful, and can make things quite confusing if you do not uncheck some of the options. And that's it actually for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.